Welcome to the Right to Reason podcast. I am your host, Robert Stanley. You are about to hear a debate between conspiracy and skepticism.
It's the Right to Reason podcast.
These theories will be defended by Philip Palmer and Shawn, Yankey. Topics will include the Mandela effect.
Okay, well, the Mandela effect is this pretty crazy idea that pops up from time to time. The name comes from Nelson Mandela, who was a political activist in Africa. He fought against the horrible apartheid system in South Africa and was incarcerated from the 60s to 1990. Some people claim to remember him dying in prison in the 1980s, when in reality, he was released from prison, helped overturn apartheid, and went on to be the president of South Africa for 5 years. He eventually died in 2013. It seems that some people combine their fuzzy and obviously unreliable memories of Mandela's death in the 1980s with his subsequent release and presidency and somehow conclude that we're somehow sliding between parallel universes.
The Nazca lines.
The Nazca lines. They lie neglected for more than 1,000 years and aren't rediscovered until the era of the airplane. They look like giant artworks. But are they? Why do the Nazca construct 300-foot-wide images and mile-long lines that they have no way of viewing?
And Bigfoot.
There's someone with a scientific background, a vet, who says Bigfoot is real and actually related to us humans.
Well, I was a skeptic. I did not believe these things existed at all prior to this study.
She's talking analysis of Sasquatch fur. After a 5-year study, more than 100 DNA samples, Dr. Melba Ketchum believes the species developed 15,000 years ago, a hybrid cross between Homo sapiens and an unknown primate.
But two skeptics, Thomas Westbrook and Brent intend to push back. This conversation is really special because it reminds me of a sandwich where the bread is just 4 guys laughing and enjoying one another's company, but the meat of it gets pretty crazy. Today, you're going to eat an angry sandwich.
So there's things that we don't understand.
You can't test it right now.
You know, there's things you can't test.
On the CIA's own website, you can look
up... The CIA's website?
Guys, come on.
All declassified these results.
It's not based on evidence.
What evidence?
It's based on evidence that he's accepted.
What evidence?
What?
I think that you have an extraordinarily low standard of evidence if you're willing to just take... If you're willing to take...
What the fuck would you say that for? Is there anything else you'd like to stop and explain to me?
I take fucking offense at that. Because I
shouldn't, because it's true.
I did a full 180 on, I used to be very religious, and I explored this stuff for years.
That's a human.
The belief is directly it comports with how it is in reality. Like, we understand reality, and we understand certain things aren't possible in reality.
You understand reality? What do you understand?
Reality.
This episode of the Right to Reason podcast is brought to you by our patrons and contributors like me. We have all recognized the value of the unrestrained marketplace of ideas and have decided to make a difference. You can make a difference too. Contribute at patreon.com/right and learn more about your right to reason at therighttoreason.com. Your activism is appreciated.
Thomas Westbrook from Holy Kool-Aid, Brent Lee from Unapologetic, Shawn Yankey from Me on Things and Stuff, and Philip Palmer. And you can find Philip on Facebook. He's a musician. What kind of music do you do, would you say? It's more like, I don't even know how to describe it. It's
What would you call it? I'm definitely into kind of atmospherics with music.
Yeah, it's a form of folk music at least, but it's I don't know, I feel weird when I listen to it. I love your stuff, man.
Most of it's kind of dark. I guess that's one glue that keeps it all together.
Yeah, you did a little bit for the Right to Reason podcast for our intro.
You still want that?
I'm still working on integrating it. Let me play that real quick for everybody and just give them a quick taste of exactly what that is, and maybe they could figure out how to describe it to themselves. But it's it's transcendental. Is that fair?
That works.
Yeah. Okay. Here it is. Thomas Westbrook, you've got a conference coming up pretty soon. Can you tell us about that real quick, please?
We do. We don't have the date set in stone yet. We're still figuring out with the hotels, but we run the annual Faithless Forum conference every year in Texas, and that's going to be in Austin this year. So we bring a bunch of different YouTubers in. All of them are, skeptic, atheist, humanist content creators. And it's the one place where you can really get all these people together and get to meet people who you've been watching online and see them in person.
Shawn, Brent, why the hell do you guys keep showing up on this podcast? It's like every other goddamn episode.
Yeah, we're gluttons for punishment.
You're better than this. You've both surpassed being here. Certainly Thomas and Philip have, but you guys should know better yourself.
I have a good time. I just do stupid stuff because it's fun.
Thanks for calling my podcast stupid. God.
It tends to be what doing stupid stuff just ends up being fun. It's weird.
I'm the host. I'm supposed to have all the sick burns. This is an odd pairing because you've got two skeptics and you've got two, I don't want to steal Dale Glover's. He's a Christian guy that comes on and debates me about Jesus a lot. But the name of his show is Skeptics and Seekers. But that's kind of what we have here. We've got two skeptics and we've got two seekers. Is it fair to call you, Philip, and you, Shawn, seekers of truth that might not be as skeptical as Brent and Thomas? Is that a fair characterization?
I suppose that's fair enough. I do hope I do have a degree of skepticism, even though I pursue some of the kind of outside areas. As we discussed the last time, I think falling into the categories of belief or disbelief is very dangerous without, availing yourself of as much information as possible before even trying to come to a conclusion about a topic.
Yeah, so it's not just claiming knowledge.
Maybe we're the true motley crew.
Yeah, but you're saying don't even claim knowledge, withhold belief until you have,
and withhold disbelief too, because that's the other side of the same coin. It's a religious disbelief, or it's a religious belief that something isn't.
I don't know. I don't know, man.
I don't see how that could work, man. Like either you reserve belief until the evidence is enough for you to warrant a belief, or otherwise you're just believing everything until it's proven false.
That was a real wordy way to put something, but to me, it's simply if you believe in something without having really looked into it, it's the same as if you disbelieve in something without having really looked into it.
But can you reserve belief? Like not necessarily
yes,
disbelief. You can reserve belief.
Exactly. I like to call it unbelief.
I don't know. I have issues with that. I don't know. Just because unbelief makes it seem like it's almost a positive affirmation. Maybe I'm mistaken on that, but just the way it sounds to me.
What if we rephrased it as believing something isn't true and believing something is true? Both can have its faults. Especially if you claim knowledge.
Agree. Totally agree.
But I would think the initial need for a good reason to believe something is true. And even if you hear something and you go, I don't buy it, to me, that's a healthier way to go. I don't know. Thomas, what do you think, man?
Well, first, I would have to say when you were listing us as two skeptics and two seekers, I would even put myself in a category as a seeker. I'm someone who I want to know what the truth is, and I want to ask the hard questions. I'm also a skeptic because I think that if you're actually genuinely concerned with finding out what's true, you have to couple a desire for truth and seeking with a healthy dose of scientific skepticism.
That's fair.
Yeah, me too.
Shawn, you did a whole episode on the Mandela effect, and it blew me away. I'm going to pull a couple things. Mandela, real quick, tell us what the Mandela effect is, in case nobody's ever heard of it, because I want to give a couple examples.
The Mandela effect is a phenomenon where many people remember certain things, events, brands, titles of movies, lines from movies, in a way that they never actually were. And it's like mass memory, in a way where you believe it was real. And you believe it may have been even a change to reality. And it started with people believing that Nelson Mandela had died in prison in the 80s. And that's how it got its name.
Yeah, and he actually died fairly recently.
Yeah, a long time later, he went on to do other things, and et cetera. But
another one is the Monopoly man doesn't have a monocle. There's no such thing as Jiffy peanut butter. Forrest Gump didn't say life is like a box of chocolates. Hannibal Lecter didn't say, hello, Clarice. But was that a good Lecter impersonation? I don't know.
It was decent, but he totally said that.
He never said it.
He totally did. Yeah, it drives me insane.
Well, what about Field of Dreams? If you build it, they will come, or if you build it, he will come.
which one is the real one? I thought it was They Will Come.
Yeah, but the movie, like from way back, and it is He Will Come.
No way.
I'm glad you experienced that one, Robert.
That's crazy. Yeah. Okay.
That doesn't even make sense.
Apparently in Star Wars, instead of saying, Luke, I am your father, he says, no, I am your father.
Right.
Yeah, that's
because they changed reality.
I can't claim on that one because I didn't really follow Star Wars ever. I watched the first one and that was it.
Dude, you got to watch The Mandalorian.
Well, sorry to spoil the fact that Darth Vader's Luke's father.
Yeah, you just totally blew it.
Yeah, you just ruined everything.
Spoiler, dude.
If you haven't seen it now after 40 years, then
yeah, seriously.
It's kind of hopeless.
That was like pre-Reagan, bro. All right. Here's another one. Ed McMahon didn't represent Publishers Clearinghouse. It's not
crazy.
It's not the Berenstain Bears. It's the Berenstain Bears. It's in stain.
Says you.
Like a stain in your shorts.
Like that. Yeah, I was going to say.
That's right. That I know is not true because I never knew how to say it.
They're not Jewish bears?
No.
I totally thought they were Jewish bears. Okay.
I did too, and I never knew if it was Stein or Steen.
What is with you and the Jews, Brent? I don't get it. Every episode you're on, this organically, supposedly, arrives. We talked about C-3PO already? Did we talk about it?
But he never had a silver leg.
Yeah, C-3PO has a silver leg.
Okay, hold on. I remember the goddamn silver leg. Okay, so I don't...
Right?
It was after he got him put back together in Return of the Jedi. Yeah, I remember that.
No, he always had it.
Tom Cruise wasn't dancing in underwear while wearing shades and risky business. Shaquille O'Neal wasn't a genie in Shazam. In Lethal Weapon, Murtaugh's daughter never played footsies with Riggs, and at the end of We Are the Champions, Queen doesn't say, of the world. Never happened.
Yeah, that's one where I agree that they never had that in there.
Well, you do?
Yeah, I fall on the other side. I think it ends with We Are the Champions, and you expect that to happen, and it doesn't, making it more powerful.
Well, you're the musician.
Now, in the live, he did say of the world.
Okay.
Yeah, there is
live. There is live recordings where he does say of the world.
Okay.
But the radio edit is what they say never had of the world.
And that itself could contribute to a lot of the confusion because there was, multiple versions of songs that were put out and stuff like that.
Yeah, in that case, that could be. But things like the Berenstain Bears, I went and checked my books from when I was a kid, and they are AIN now. Like all of a sudden... Let's just say one of these crazy theories, like we've gone into some alternate reality that's almost like this one. Well, that meant that book literally had to just change the spelling, like poof.
Like the Matrix, like has a glitch
to catch up to reality.
Like it was it was a mistake
from the Matrix too.
Some of this stuff, like that you said, Forrest Gump, he never says life is like a box of chocolates. Well, what he actually says is, my mom always said life was like a box of chocolates.
No, that makes more sense. You would be right. You would be right, but you had it backwards. You had it backwards.
Mom always said.
Yeah. So it's things like that, our brains are really good at condensing or shortening or saying things that are more rhetorically pleasing or easier to say. The Berenstain Bears, like if you look at the cover of it, it's done in this kind of cursive-y font.
But
and you're misquoting Forrest Gump. It's is what it's in the movie. Was is what people remember.
Yeah, but that's
my point, though.
Is was.
No, was makes more sense. When you said it, it felt right to you because it made more sense to you, and it even makes more sense grammatically.
No,
life is or life was.
No, we all remember it as life is like a box of chocolates.
Yeah, that's what I remember. Life is like a box of chocolates.
When she said it, she would say is, not was, like it was in her past or something.
No, he says my mama always said in the past life was like a box of chocolates because she was saying it.
God damn it. I'm playing it right now. Hold on one second.
Do you want a chocolate? I could eat about 1.5 million of these. My mom always said life was like a box of chocolates.
Damn.
Yeah, that's just messed up.
You got me. You did. I already had looked it up, but yeah, you got me.
That's messed up.
We went to the moon. And 9/11 wasn't an inside job. You have been proven wrong, Shawn.
No,
the point that I'm trying to make
was a false flag.
The point that I'm trying to make with the Mandela effect, though, is that whether or not we remember it correctly or not, these changes are so subtle. They're so minor. Like people just misremember all the time. We know that the human brain works like that. I don't think it's that significant that
Tom,
it's was or is.
Okay, can I
remember
interject here? Can I
Febreze
interject?
changing.
If I lived in a solipsistic world where all you guys were figments of my imagination, you were here for me, it wouldn't be so weird. But when you have half of a whole population, I know memory's tricky and we're constantly re-editing things, but if you have half of a population remembering things one way and half of another, that's weird. You would think if we're all re-editing it, there would be a million varieties, not just two.
Yeah, why do they seem to align? That's the real dilemma.
Yes.
Because our brains remarkably are similar to one another's. I mean, in a lot of ways. And so
you're saying the Scarecrow always had a gun?
Who?
The Scarecrow in Wizard of Oz. He always had a gun?
What?
So,
yeah.
The Scarecrow had a gun?
The Scarecrow has a gun.
No.
What?
Yes, he does in the Wizard of Oz. Yes.
No.
Now he does.
The Scarecrow has a gun?
Yes.
Okay, I got one for you. And this isn't really a Mandela effect, but I recently played Wizard of Oz with what's that Pink Floyd album? The famous one.
Dark Side of the Moon?
Yeah, I played them both at the same time. Jesus Christ, it's perfect. It's so trippy. Fucking perfect. And the lead guitarist of the band, his name's escaping me right now. But Phil, do you remember?
David Gilmour.
Gilmour did an interview and he said, "No, man, we were all on drugs. We didn't plan this out. Like, do you realize how complicated that shit would be to do that perfectly? No, we just played a song." But I encourage all of you to check this out, and anybody listening, you can just go to YouTube and just type in Wizard of Oz, Dark Side of the Moon. It's got a million examples, but
it's you put in Dark Side of Oz, and that's if you put Dark Side of Oz, it'll come up.
So you know what I'm talking about. It's fucking crazy, right?
Oh yeah, we used to watch that all the time back in my drug days. Yeah, we used to take acid and watch that shit.
I'm just saying.
I've known about it for 20-something years, but I've never tried it. Meaning the movie, not drugs.
So Thomas,
it's good to clarify.
Thomas, you did an episode that kind of blew my mind recently, where you moved a nut up a bolt with your mind, or allegedly. Obviously, you didn't do it with special powers, but I never could figure it out.
You know, that was like a $20 magic trick or something. I think I paid extra because I got several different pieces that you don't have to necessarily use together, and I combined it, but it was just at a magic shop in Vegas. But the thing is, all the stuff in magic, you know, because I've been dabbling a little bit here and there. I've gotten to interview a lot of world famous magicians, including James Randi and Banachek and Dr. Ray Hyman and others. And every single one of these things.
His last name is Hyman. Yes. Like I know James Randi. Like that's cool, but Hyman. Yeah, I'm sorry.
He was actually hired by the CIA to investigate psychic phenomenon, both as a magician and a PhD psychiatrist. So,
his name's still Hyman, but all right.
In every single one of these cases, when someone does something, that says, "Oh, hey, I have magic," there's always a physical explanation for it. There's always a naturalistic explanation that shows how they do it. And in the case of this bolt trick, it's simply electromagnetism is all that it was.
How did that?
So you mean in terms of telekinesis, as opposed to like mind reading, which is really kind of a different thing, or having a psychic event that you have no control over? Because I can tell you, I've had psychic events that I had no control over.
Telekinesis.
That's the moving
is
of
one
objects
form
with your mind. Yes.
Yes, that's one form of magic tricks. Is people who claim they can move objects with their mind.
Sure.
When you say mind reading, that would more fall under mentalism, and that also has a bunch of tricks and things. If you're getting into the psychic realm and saying I can read your mind with psychic powers, then it usually falls under something like cold reading or hot reading.
Yeah. And no doubt, I'm sure it's loaded with frauds. But my point is, I think there is something to this whole thing that we can't quite understand yet. That probably has logical, natural, scientific explanations, and we're just not there yet. Because I've had an event or a couple of them that, to me, defy coincidence. It would be more bizarre to just say, "Oh, that's a bizarre coincidence," than to accept that something else is going on.
Tell us what happened.
Okay, so in one of these things, back 20-something years when I lived up in Athens, I was doing a lot of recording in a friend's studio. I hadn't seen my father in about 2 years, and I had a dream right before I woke up to get ready for the studio that he died. He fell into my arms on a dock out on a river, and I woke up, of course, very upset. And then, there's the whole, it was just a dream. Well, I got up, got dressed, scooted off to the studio, and within 30 minutes, I got a phone call from my mom telling me that he had died. Now, I did not know he was sick. I did not know he was in the hospital or whatever. Later, when I talked to the rest of my family members about the time frame here, my dream was happening at the time he died. Now, that's one example of something. I've got quite a few, actually, and I don't want to bore you all with them. But if you trust me on that one, you can trust me that these other events were just as weird.
I've heard stories like that all the time, and I've also, am familiar with the fact that there are billions of people who lose loved ones every single day who don't have dreams. So just purely statistically speaking, it is going to happen. Like, to some people, it is going to happen.
Okay, you're going to force me into one more example then.
Okay.
Okay, have you ever heard of the game Balderdash?
I know the name. I forget the rules, though.
Well, you remember Pictionary?
Yes.
Balderdash is like the word version of Pictionary. It's all the words in the English language that only English professors and lawyers should know. It's mostly really weird words. And the rules are one person reads the card and spells the word, and they don't participate on that go-round. Everybody else sits around, and they try to either guess the definition of the word, or they make up a definition that they think will fool everybody else, because you later have to vote on this. So my sister Rosie read the word Riro, R-I-R-O, R-I-R-O.
Hold on, Phil. Hold on. How awesome would it be if right then you'd have been like, my sister read the word hymen. And we'd all just be like, oh, shit. He's right. It proves it.
He would never believe you until the official mainstream accepted narrative told him to.
Okay. Ooh, that was harsh. But
it wasn't harsh. He considers himself skeptical, but every time I talk to somebody that does consider himself skeptical, well, they're not skeptical of anything.
All right, well,
they have an answer for everything.
So you can then decide.
Yeah, please.
So I spelled out the word on a piece of paper. I had no clue what it was. I thought it sounded vaguely like some Spanish derivative, so I wrote down a Spanish chant sung during bullfights. I folded it up. My sister Becky was sitting in front of me. She couldn't even possibly see what I was writing because her back was, in front of me. I turned in my paper to Rosie. Everybody else eventually turned in their papers. Rosie then read back a Spanish chant sung during bullfights. And then she read the next guess, which was a Spanish song sung during bullfights. It turned out Riro was an Australian bird. Now, was that coincidence?
I mean, if I were to hear Riro, it's not unlikely to say, okay, it sounds like a chant. It sounds
almost
like something people might say.
And everything verbatim except for one word, chant and song.
So you have a short sentence with a few words. I'm just saying, like, what is more likely that over the course of your life with thousands of things that occur, you happen to have occasional things like this where you play a game and there's some sort of coincidence or there's some sort of little thing that's similar. Are you familiar with the Booba Kiki effect?
Not at all.
Where if you show someone, a bunch of like curvy lines and you show someone a bunch of jagged lines and you say one of these is Boba and one of these is Kiki, almost everyone in the audience is able to say, all right, the one that's, with jagged lines is Kiki because it sounds like Kiki, like sharp inflections of your voice, and Boba sounds more soft and round, right? Okay. Regardless of what language people speak. Now, if you take something like Balderdash and you say, all right, here's a word, Riro, and it sounds like something that's Spanish.
But Rosie did not say it like that. She simply said Riro. That was me throwing that in there for myself.
But either way,
she didn't go Riro. She said Riro.
Okay, but you see, Riro, it's two words, one after the other. It sounds like a chant. Like if I were just to guess and look at that, it sounds like it. It seems like it.
But she did. It sounds like a chant to me, honestly. It does.
I've played.
Just repeating it.
That's always the case. There are going to be events that occur that we still have not caught up to measure and quantify.
Yes, right. Exactly. Yeah.
But that's no reason to land on a conclusion that this was somehow magical.
Nobody landed on any.
Nobody's landed on a conclusion. And
then what do you? I don't understand. What are you saying there? Are you saying that this is just a weird thing that happened?
He's saying that.
Remain open to the possibility that there are things going on that science has not caught up to.
Okay, and
that's not landing on a conclusion.
At what point, when we're going through all the possible reasons for why something might happen, can we start, at what point of absurdity can we start to rule things out? I could say, the reason that you guys came across the same, a definition is because there's a blue little unicorn inside both of your brains that's, farting out a particular smell that's causing some weird shit in your mind that you're completely unaware of that leads
gaslighting.
Right. Blue unicorns?
Yeah, why go straight to gaslighting? Like, why try to make it sound like he's being ridiculous?
Well, because it straight up.
Because it sounds absurd to you doesn't mean that it sounds absurd to everybody. And are you the one that knows everything and nobody else knows anything? That's what I'm asking.
You're completely missing the point of what I'm saying.
I'm not. I'm totally
he's not.
What my question was, and I'll repeat it. At what point? Because obviously the scenario of the unicorn, all of us can agree is absurd, and that's why I place it out there. Now, at what point between something that seems perfectly plausible based off of everything that we know about how the universe works and this unicorn does an idea become so far-fetched and absurd and rule it out? Like,
well,
where
you
would
do
you guys
realize
draw that
that
line?
200 years ago, if somebody told you that they had this device that they could talk on with other people halfway around the world, that would be considered absurd. That was science we couldn't even grasp.
It would appear like magic to them, the things that we have today.
They
wouldn't believe you that it could exist. It would be absurd. So there's things that we don't understand.
You can't test it right now.
There's things you can't test.
Yeah.
You're just going to have to
down the road we can. Maybe down the road it can be tested, and maybe it is being tested, and we don't know who's testing it.
Well, at the point that we can test it, then that's the point that we can come to the evidence based on our experimentation in order to warrant the belief.
And if you only thought like that, and people only thought like that, you would never come up with any new ideas.
Well, yeah, you would never even decide to test it. So you have to say, well, I'm not
that's
buying
not true at all. No.
So
yes, it is. It's absolutely true.
No, because you have to have the interest in it to want to. So,
yes.
To me, the answer is you say, well, I'm not really buying it, but I will stay open to the possibility.
You realize that scientists have been studying and testing for psychic phenomenon, for telekinesis, for all these additional forces now for decades. And they're like, if these forces, no, they don't.
Yes, they do.
No, they don't.
Yes, they do. It's documented.
I literally did
it's
an interview.
Absolutely
I literally just did an interview this year. Can I finish, please?
No, absolutely not. You're not going to talk over me about this. It's true.
I literally just did an interview with Dr. Ray Hyman, who worked with the CIA testing this stuff.
Hyman?
Yes.
Right? I want to hear this.
You can try to downplay, you can try to laugh at the name, but the fact of the matter is,
all right, come on, guys.
Just
for 1 second,
right now on the CIA's own website, you can look
the CIA's website.
Guys, come on.
All been declassified these results.
Now wait a minute.
You guys keep interrupting Tom.
Why are we trusting the CIA?
You don't have to, because there are also external organizations that have tested this as well.
Okay.
That have results that have been published in respected, peer-reviewed scientific journals, and there's no indication whatsoever that this stuff works.
Okay, well, I shouldn't mention this because I don't have my facts together, but I do remember being at the bookstore one time, and there was some former general who wrote a book about remote viewing. That's all I can give you. I can't.
About
No, not Stubblebine. No, not Stubblebine.
Oh my fuck.
This wasn't Stubblebine. I'm familiar with who he is. He's a guy that's now open to 9/11.
Are you talking about the guy that went on Art Bell that also said that the world was going to end in 2002 and he has his own remote viewing course?
I don't know because I can't remember his name. I can't tell you.
Let me pull it up.
Sounds about right. Honestly, that sounds about right.
I think it was Ed Grimes.
I said, I shouldn't bring it up because I won't be able to even verify that for you. Even if you bring the name up, I won't remember.
The shit out of you too. Anyway,
have you guys?
Yes, you are. He is absolutely.
I haven't gaslighted
searching for ways.
I take offense at that. Just because I'm able to shoot something down because it's absurd doesn't mean it's gaslighting.
Shoot everything down
well, I mean, up until this point, I don't think you've really shot anything down. You've given a strong take on your opinion, but I don't think you've conclusively
based on evidence.
It's not based on evidence.
What evidence?
Based on the evidence that he's accepted.
What evidence?
What?
I think that you have an extraordinarily low standard of evidence if you're willing to just take. If you're willing to take.
What the fuck would you say that for?
If you're not willing to accept peer-reviewed scientific journal results, if you have people like James Randi who's been testing this stuff,
you pick and choose what results you will accept.
Because
you don't look at all evidence. You don't look at all.
If it doesn't comport with reality, then you can't
pick and choose what evidence.
You didn't look at all of reality. You're eliminating stuff that you have been taught to mock and ridicule with no basis for it.
we all pick and choose the evidence that we rely on, but some of us have higher standards for the evidence that
That's
we
bullshit.
will accept.
Don't use a higher standard. Don't say it's a higher standard. You don't have a higher standard. You accept
I'm not going to accept the word of coast to coast radio.
You don't question it at all, and you call yourself a skeptic, but you're not being skeptical about anything.
Of course, I'm being skeptical about things. I'm being skeptical of insane, ludicrous claims by like people
Who
like
made an insane, ludicrous claim so far.
Let's define real quick.
What was
Let's
ludicrous?
define what skepticism is, okay? Skepticism is reserving belief until the evidence is enough to warrant a belief.
Full circle.
Okay? And that's different for a lot of different people, and that's why he said the standards are different, okay?
He said that he holds his information to a higher standard.
Yeah, but the key there
is there anything else you'd like to stop and explain to me?
The key there for me would be the two words reserving belief, whereas what it comes across from you two is actual disbelief, which I pointed out earlier is the same. It's the other side of the coin of belief. I don't hear people that are open but reserving belief. I hear absolute disbelief.
No, because that would be believing that it's not true.
Exactly.
And that's not the case. It's reserving belief. You can say, I don't know, but there's just not enough evidence to support that claim.
Okay, well, is there any area...
There's a difference between not guilty and innocent.
All right, is there
do you understand that?
I do. So can I ask you, is there any area of anything that goes under the ambiguous umbrella of paranormal where you might accept you don't know enough about the subject, so you really kind of form too much of an opinion?
Well, I go with the methodological naturalism, where I say, hey, until we got an ability to investigate the supernatural, we don't get to appeal to it.
Appeal to it.
Yeah. You know, act like it's a fundamental part of reality. You know what I mean? When you're talking about stuff, if you can't demonstrate how you know that those things are true at all, we need a method in which we can investigate the supernatural. It's simple. I mean,
can I throw something out there real quick? Have you guys heard of the Nazca lines in Peru?
Yes.
This one's kind of blowing my mind recently, and I don't have a solution for it. I'm sure there is one. As you know, as leaning more on the skeptical side here, the Nazca lines are a group of large geoglyphs formed by depressions or shallow incisions made in the soil of the Nazca Desert in southern Peru. They were created between 500 BC and 500 AD. Most lines run straight across the landscape, but there are also figurative designs of animals and plants made up of lines. This is weird because looking at photos of this, there's like monkeys, obvious spiders, birds. It's not just me looking at it and interpreting it as a bird. Like it is obviously designed, and this isn't something that you could view from a treetop. There's no mountains in the area. This is something that you would see from an airplane or aerial, unidentified flying object, as it were. It's very bizarre. And once again, I don't believe that the explanation is supernatural. I don't think aliens have visited our planet. I don't go that way. But whenever I see this stuff, I'll be honest, it freaks me the fuck out.
So that means there is somewhere in the back of your mind where you remain open that it could be a bizarre explanation. Now, I remain open on those and have no real opinion. Things like that and rock quarries where these things were being clearly cut with some kind of precision cutting tool a long time ago and were then being carried some long distances. I don't know how that happened. I'm not saying it's non-human, but humans may have had much more capability a long time ago than we currently are accepting. Those kind of things, including the Nazca lines. Who knows? You know, for anybody to claim that they know that there's no answer that we can't just provide right now on those matters, that's just dogma.
I think that there's a difference, though, between saying that someone is making an overt claim that this is beyond a shadow of a doubt, the way that it happened, which I think most experts don't. You know, you'll read the scientific consensus, or you'll read, archaeologists or, historians and stuff talking about an issue, and they almost never will say this absolutely didn't happen like this, or it absolutely did happen like this. They almost always hedge it with the most likely explanation is this. And I think that when we think of these terms, we need to think of them statistically in terms of what is more likely, what is the most likely explanation for what the evidence that we see.
Thank you.
Could we potentially be wrong on certain things? Well, it depends on what the claim is. Some claims it's like, yeah, there's a 0.0000001% chance that we're wrong. Some claims things that we're still trying to figure out and understand, like, dark matter or dark energy. We might say there's a 30% chance that we're wrong with this theory, or there's a 20% chance, or we don't know. But it's something like the Nazca lines,
I think when you go back more than 1,000 years, what is likely is just not really, we don't know what was likely. The more you go back, the more there's so much guesswork. There are things you can piece together, but you can't say you would know. It's just like going 1,000 years in the future and saying knowing what's likely.
But are you an archaeologist, though?
I'm not. I don't have to.
Do you know how they tell how things happen?
I know how they draw some conclusions, sure, but I'm not. Look, there's so many anomalies that archaeologists can't explain, like how a gold chain was found in a coal quarry, and the dating back of the coal quarry is millions of years. Those get thrown in the box of anomalies. It doesn't fit our view of how things were, so that goes in the box of anomalies, and that's understandable. But it does have to be dealt with. It does throw a real wrench.
I'm not sure what you're talking about. I think something like that I'd have to take on a case-by-case basis, because I do know that there are hoaxes. I do know also that there are,
and there are also really well-documented things too, like the human footprints and the dinosaur tracks in a riverbed. That's well-known.
That's actually been very well explained, that particular one.
No, there's not a particular one. There's several. And what is the explanation?
Are you talking about the one in Texas?
No, Mississippi.
Because there's one in Texas where they're like, look, there's human footprints and dinosaurs. And Dawkins actually had an entire documentary where he talked about that and how it's possible.
Well, I'll look that up, but I'm referring to one in a Mississippi riverbed.
Again, like these types of things, like we could go through one by one and take them on a case-by-case basis. But my point is that whenever you actually sit down and you talk with the archaeologists or you talk with the experts or the paleontologists, like there may be things that we don't necessarily know as lay people. But as soon as you take the time to ask them those questions or to see like why they present the theories that they have, they make sense. And there's reasons why they lean in certain directions, sometimes much stronger than in other directions. And it's because there are ways that we can figure this stuff out. And there's ways that are reliable that they test and that they look into these things.
So you don't think that within academia and peer review that there's any kind of good old boy network that occurs sometimes, and we already kind of invested in a certain view, and here comes some renegade who's suggesting so-and-so and doing the research, and it doesn't fit, so that kind of gets blocked out.
If someone were to come along as a renegade and present research that's actually well-grounded, then that person would win a Nobel Prize. Because they would completely upend the way that science works.
Because that's how peer review works, man. Like peer review is like people trying to disprove the other
right, but
claim.
You're saying that peer review is infallible. That it's
no, it's not infallible.
I'm not saying anything of the sort.
No.
Okay, so what I'm suggesting is, we're all humans here. Even scientists are humans. They're subject to ego, monetary investments, getting grants. All those things have to be taken into consideration. You're saying we're not saying that, but every time you argue that the experts say, well, there's so many other factors that go into it.
Right, and he only takes into account what he wants to
accept. And they may have
accept.
blinders on because they,
Actually, can I just stop you right there? Because you keep saying that I only take into account what I want to accept.
You're presenting everything you say that it's a fact.
Can you please not interrupt me?
You've talked a ton.
Every single time that you bring that up and you say I'm already sold on an idea, I take fucking offense at that because I did change my mind. I did a full 180 on, I used to be very religious and I explored this stuff for years and years and years. And I examined evidence. I tried to figure out how we can know what we know. And I studied epistemology. I studied science across various fields. So this accusation that I already have my mind made up and I'll just go select what evidence I already want to choose, I find to be extremely insulting and horseshit.
Oh, well.
I think most humans have that tendency without even realizing. I'm not just accusing you. That's a human.
The belief is directly it comports with how it is in reality. Like we understand reality, and we understand certain things aren't possible.
You understand reality?
Nobody understands reality. Nobody knows what the.
You're acting like it's a video game. Are you kidding me? Like, what are you talking about? Like we can just rewrite the past and be like, oh, I thought it was different. Like, come on.
You understand reality. You're telling me you understand reality.
Yeah, that's what he's telling you.
Yes, I do. I mean, I understand to the best. I'm not absolutely certain. I mean, I could be dreaming right fucking now.
So you realize 1,000 years from now, somebody would look back at you saying that. That'd be the same as you looking back at a caveman saying he understood reality. right?
Okay, exactly.
But the things they're saying just don't comport with reality.
Comport.
I mean, like, just don't comport with the continuous reliability of logic and things like that. You're going against that. You're going against logic.
50 words or less, define reality for me. 50 words or less.
What?
Define reality for me. You said you know what it is.
Reality is basically the external model. Well, I would say that the external model is the same for everybody.
And that's
my internal model. I'm trying to make sure my internal model of reality matches my external model of reality, which is what everybody seems to understand.
Who is everybody? Who is everybody? There's 7 billion plus people on this planet.
People's opinion that he holds valuable.
But
I think he means
actually do the work to try to discover what happens in reality.
You've got scientists who are still firmly of the mindset that physicality is as it appears. Okay, this is solid. The ground is solid. You've got people that are saying we live in a hologram. You've got everywhere in between. So you have a wide variety, even among scientists, and you're telling me you know what reality is.
The Enlightenment brought upon a shift of empiricism, right? Where not only did it bring us the French Revolution, the American Revolution, a lot of legislative changes, a lot of changes for democracy and free rights, different concepts of justice, but it also challenged us about philosophy in a way where we stopped looking at explanations as having to come from a divine source. That it's kind of linked together in the same way that we'll say Iran is a sovereign state that was attacked by the United States. Not to change the topic, but just as an example, that term sovereign, right, used to reference that it was divine right of kings, right? It started to adjust us away from the Roman Catholic perspective of Western civilization giving us truth and started saying we need empirical truth, not necessarily normative truth that would come from some form of a deity that's interpreted by a man, right? But this empiricism, while I agree with Philip and Shawn here that there's a lot of shit out there that I don't understand, and it, like I said, it freaks me the fuck out. And I like that feeling a little bit, I'll be honest with you, and it makes me investigate more, and that's what makes it fun. But I also feel like in this conversation, and correct me if I'm wrong here, guys, please feel free to, but I feel like whenever you have pushed back against Thomas and Brent, you've almost pushed back against empiricism, against the scientific method itself.
Well, you know why? Because empiricism is based on trusting your senses, and we all have filters. All of our senses are filtered. You can't even look, you have no direct experience. You can't even say, I know what my hand is. You know what your hand is filtered, okay? None of us have direct experience. We don't know what's going on. We're interpreting information that our senses send back to our brain, okay? And maybe there's a collective interpretation of that or agreement, and that's what allows us to kind of work in this world together. But there is no consensus about what reality is or that we can actually quantify it, okay? There's just no way for that right now. That's why when you have an accident scene and you got 5 different people and 5 different versions, that's because they all literally have 5 different viewpoints of what happened, not just from their physical angle either. It's been shown through testing, and y'all are all about scientific testing, that we interpret things differently and legitimately. That's why you have Republicans screaming at Democrats, because they are certain, and vice versa, that they've got their version of reality. It's just, you can't, that's dogma. It doesn't matter we talk about religion, politics, science, anything. It's all dogma.
That's why half the population sees the Mandela effect one way and half the other.
and look, I don't see it one way. I say I'm open to. That's what I'm saying.
I meant that half of them hear, the old Mandela effect phrases one way, and half of them remember it a different way.
Absolutely.
Yeah. No, I completely agree that like we all experience things through filters, and our senses do make mistakes. Our memories are very susceptible to misremembering and changing. And
agree.
Our eyesight can be horrible. Our hearing can be awful. There's optical illusions. There's auditory hallucinations and stuff that we can experience. While I do think that I would disagree with Brent when he said that we all know the nature of reality. I think that there's a lot of stuff that we don't know, and there are things that, to be honest, we never will be able to know. You cannot disprove hard solipsism, because the results that you would expect from a scientific test for a hard solipsistic scenario are identical to reality. So we have to kind of make do to some extent. We have to say what's practical. Well, how can we live our lives in the most practical way that assumes that the universe is consistent, that assumes that there is a universe? Those are things that we all kind of assume just in living and carrying out our daily lives.
Yeah, I'm not totally not on board with what you're saying, and I'll add to it for whatever it's worth that I actually intentionally, I say intentionally, that's a little bit misleading, but I did my best for 6 months to not only view my world from a solipsistic view, but also that I had no free will in that world. And contrary to what a lot of people say, I think it's very healthy to attempt that. I know it could be considered dangerous, but I think it's very healthy to. Most people, 99.9% of this world, don't even consider solipsism or don't even know about the concept. And furthermore, also assume they have utter free will in this world. And there really is no proof of that either. There's no way to prove or disprove it. And my leaning is that I think we're all control freaks for believing we're always in control, including this conversation.
I don't say that I understand reality like perfectly. That wasn't what I meant to say. What I was trying to say was like, when certain things break the laws of logic, I feel like because of logic's continuous reliability, that is a good metric in which we can determine, what is true and what is not true. And so when I say like it doesn't comport with reality, it means it doesn't follow the laws of logic.
Sure, and I'm intentionally coming at you hard with all that. It's not that it's just when we get down to these specific matters where I feel like this stuff really is anomalous, and yet that's why we're here to address it. We're not talking about, a walk down the city and observing buildings and things that we normally see every day. We're talking about the weird stuff, but that there is enough of this stuff that goes on to warrant, let's look more into this and not be so dismissive, blue unicorns and all. Look, I'm not even going to tell you blue unicorns don't exist. I have no belief in them, but how could I know? Maybe one day a blue unicorn will show up in my backyard and I'll have to go, what the fuck,
And that's right where we're at with the stuff you're talking about.
But again, before you prod that bear, Brent, I think you may still be missing the point that I was trying to make with the unicorns. I was trying to make it as absurd as possible, as far-fetched as possible.
You were using a yardstick where that's considered absurd. And I'm telling you, I don't consider anything absurd, really. That's where I'm going in my life. This is what I'm talking about. Life is so bewildering, like Robert was saying. But I think it's much more of it is bewildering than we let on. We think we've got 99% of it or 90% of it figured out, and there's this little percentage that we haven't. I think got 0.25% figured out, and there's so much more that we don't even know that we don't know because they haven't even occurred to us.
Do you believe that we can disprove things?
Yeah, I do. Like, why don't we take the subject? I want to see y'all disprove Bigfoot for me right now. Let's just go ahead and shift high gear.
That's not the way proving things works.
No.
Disprove that invincible leprechauns don't exist.
Okay. I can tell you, and I can't prove it to you, but I can tell you from my experience, filters and all, Bigfoot, there is a reality to the subject of Bigfoot. Now, no, I can't prove that to you, and it's not my job to. But when somebody comes at me and they tell me about something I know, like what y'all are saying, much more about this, or this. This is a subject I have personal experience with quite a bit. And I'm like, you're talking, if you come at me with this subject is jokey or is blue unicorny, I'm like, you don't get out there in the field with me, dude. Spin it,
So right, honestly,
okay, you go ahead. You do.
When it comes to something like Bigfoot, I personally don't find Bigfoot as far-fetched as psychic claims, because it's a large primate. We know that there's primates. We know that there's ape-like creatures. But I'll believe in Bigfoot when I see a body, when I see proof of Bigfoot, and we can analyze it, we can sequence its genome. I'll 100% turn on a dime and be like, you know what, you were right. But until I see that,
I totally agree.
All right, so we're going to have to move a little into his territory of conspiracy here, and this is just based on logic alone. Okay, I know they exist. Okay, I've had personal experience with them. Something I didn't even tell Robert about last year. Okay, we tend to trust our eyes more as humans. We trust our eyes more than anything else. So we even say, I see, to mean I believe or I understand. But other senses are just as relevant. We know that owls basically see with their ears, right?
What can I tell? Can I tell a little story here real quick? It perfectly relates to what you're saying.
Go ahead.
I saw an alien creature. Okay, there's a spot that I have at my work where I'm sitting out over basically it's like a bay wall. I live in Florida, and I work right next to the beach. And there's this beautiful spot that I love to go out to on my breaks. And I saw, like with my own eyes, I saw some type of creature that clearly was swimming pop out of the water, right? Mm-hmm. And then flew at me like it was a fish, but then all of a sudden it's flying, came at me. I looked down at the ground, because it went right between my legs. I was sitting on a bench, and it went right between my legs. And when I looked down, it like had crab legs, and it ran away, And I was like, holy, what creature swims, flies, and then has crab legs? You know what I mean? And it was just like, and to me, it was just like, holy shit! I just saw some like alien creature or some sort of creature that is not on record of existing, And the more I thought about it, though, and here's how the mind works. This is why it's so important. It was most likely, and like what Thomas was just talking about. What's most likely? Most likely, it was a fish that jumped out of the water. A cicada was flying at me simultaneously, and so my eyes locked onto that. And then as soon as it got there, I didn't realize that there was a crab underneath my legs. And to me, I put all three of those things into one thing.
Okay, and it was frame. But like from beginning to end, how much time would you say passed in this experience?
It was very fast. I'll be honest.
Well,
it was fast.
That would buttress your experience, obviously. But if you have a good 30 seconds to 45 seconds to sit and just carefully look at something that's large from 40 feet away, that's a different scenario that has shoulders and is not a bear.
Even then, I find if I had a personal eyewitness account where I'm not hearing it from someone else, but it's me physically, personally seeing it, I'm going to be skeptical of my own eyes. Because
that's fine.
Yeah.
Let me finish this thought though. Now, if I hear it secondhand from someone else, I'm going to be 10 times as skeptical, because at that point it becomes hearsay. It's no longer revelation; it's hearsay. That doesn't mean that person didn't have an experience, but I don't know what happened. I don't know if they're misremembering. I don't know if they were hallucinating. I don't know if they were on drugs. I don't know if they saw something similar, and there's no way to go and prove it. That's not.
Now, when you see a horse, are you skeptical of your own eyes?
No, because a horse is not an extraordinary experience.
Because it was acknowledged by other people, right?
Because we can take horses, we can ride horses, we can touch and feel and take them apart, sequence their genome. We can a horse is a very everyday occurrence.
But you haven't done that, right? I'm saying let's just take an animal that you don't normally see often, but like a bear. You haven't personally dissected a bear, have you?
But bears have been dissected. They've been documented. I've seen quite a few myself. Like, again, it's not an extraordinary situation. It's more horse, but it's not as extraordinary as like an ET or something.
So let me ask you this. What do you know about the subject we're talking about? What do you know about what has been discovered that is validated? That's what I'm asking. What do you know about it? Aside from my telling you about a sighting, not to mention, I'm not even going into everything else that I've experienced since that sighting 20-something years ago with, because I go intentionally into the field and research the subject. Okay. I'm not a scientist, but I do the scientific method of researching it and observing. So, but let's just take me out of the equation. What do you know about the subject, about what has been found?
Well, I think in the area of Bigfoot, I'm a little bit hesitant to dive in and start making claims one way or another, because I haven't really studied cryptozoology very much.
Okay.
And so I'm not going to make broad statements as to what is and isn't good, or a reliable.
Well, kudos to you, because there are a lot of people that will do exactly that, and then after I talk to them, they're the people that see the local news story somewhere where they all the newscasters are kind of laughing and poking fun, and they use that as that's the evidence. It's a big joke. Clearly it's a subject just like any of these where there are hoaxes, there are misidentifications, there is all that. There is a hardcore, though, of things that just simply don't fall into that category. There are definitely hair samples that have been found and have been researched and do not match any recognized species, but are primate in nature. Okay, that's been shown. There are audio recordings that have been vetted by sound labs.
Analyzed by who? Like, what are these? You said that there have been hair samples. Like my point when I was saying,
they're analyzed on the one hand, by scientists, by biologists, and sound labs.
When I say on the one hand, I'm not a cryptozoologist, I can't speak to specific instances, but I can speak to what I would accept as a reliable source of evidence or not.
Exactly.
What I think
so
is
what I could do, and I won't bore these guys to death with this, but
Okay.
if you send me a friend request, I will load you up with information where these people take what they've gathered. That's what's good. It's just like with people that go out and they find dinosaur bones. They might not even be paleontologists, but their job is then to get the bones to the paleontologists.
Mm-hmm.
You have people that are gathering evidence, and they are then sending it to unbiased scientists who are then studying this, who have no opinion. The audio recordings I'm referring to this day, not only have been vetted by a sound lab, when I say crypto linguist, don't think like this guy. The word crypto has been kind of like adulterated, I guess. Now, this guy worked as a professional crypto linguist for the Navy. And those same sounds.
Like a cryptographer.
He studied other languages. He was decoding stuff, Spanish and Russian, for the Navy. Okay. He is a linguist. His son wanted to do had to do a book report and wanted to do a book report on Bigfoot, and he got his dad to help him. Well, he had no knowledge about the subject other than anybody else.
Do you know that? Can you leave us with the names of any of these people? Because
yes, his name is Scott Nelson. You can look him up. So when Scott Nelson, and that's the other thing, for anything I can't immediately drop a name on, I've got the information that I can send you. But Scott Nelson, the minute he heard these recordings, and these recordings were already vetted as being not hoax, these recordings occurred in the 70s, were recorded to tape. He said not only he knew he was listening to a language, not grunts like a chimp he was listening to a language. And he's been studying.
This?
What?
Who recorded this and where?
Okay, there was a hunting group that would go up to the Sierra Nevada mountains every year, and they started having a lot of bizarre stuff occurring, and especially these.
Can I just play it? It would take like 2 seconds. You can just hear it. This is like the Kung Fu sounding one, right? That you're talking about.
More than 4 hours of these recordings. You can pull up a few minutes of them online.
But it kind of sounds like a Kung Fu movie, right? Like I'm not making fun of it. I'm just saying like this.
It depends. Some of them sound very ape-like, and then there's some that were labeled samurai chatter.
Yeah.
And when you hear those,
that's the one you're referring to.
Sound like a samurai warrior. But I've noticed lately a lot of the stuff that gets labeled samurai chatter is they've misidentified more of those grunts and howls.
Let me play
it. Let's see.
But dude, I've heard cats sound like fucking humans before, so I don't know, man.
Let me just pull it up real quick.
See what you're saying? You're interrupting. You're forgetting these sounds have been analyzed. Okay, they have been analyzed by a sound lab at a college.
That's true.
Okay,
that's true. Let me play it real quick.
Completely.
So I guess I'm just wondering why is it?
I found it. Check this out. Check this out. Now that's the guy responding.
That's the human right there. Yeah, that's the human.
All right, so yeah, that was allegedly.
That was really drowned out in noise. Like it should be much clearer than that.
Yeah, I remember the original.
Anyway, there are much clearer versions.
But that was a human responding to it. Also, he was making the call back allegedly. Yeah.
Right. I'll just have to send him some of the cleaned up recordings where you can hear it, or even those. That sounds like a copy of a copy of a copy, which I'm sure it is.
So you said that was in the 70s?
Those recordings were done over 72, 73, 74, I believe. There's about 40 hours of vocalizations recorded.
50 years with the rise of smartphones and audio recorders and equipment left and right.
We have recordings. Yes, we do.
Like you would think that this would be so commonplace. There would just be like actual similar recordings by the thousands.
Yeah, there are recordings. I'm not saying
found at least one body, like at least one.
Well, wait a minute.
Thank you. That's my point.
So put it in I know that's everybody.
Where's the bodies?
Listen, think about this. Are you familiar with Les Stroud?
I'm not. Like I said, this isn't. Cryptozoology is not a topic I've spent a lot of time on.
I'm not. Les Stroud is not look, you're missing the point. He's a survivalist guy.
Oh yeah, Survivor Man, right?
Yeah, he goes out and films himself. He's not like that fraud Bear Grylls. He goes out and really puts himself in the wild. He's done it all his life. He went into the Canadian wilderness for a year without so much as a match, okay? And when he did his show, he actually sets up the camera, films himself walking off in the distance 200. He doesn't have a crew with him. He's really, you can see when he's lost weight over the course of an episode from doing this. My point is, he'll tell you, He spent his whole life in the wilderness, and he's never once come across a bear skeleton. Now, you're talking about something that is much more human in intelligence and is aware of what kind of threat we pose.
But you're talking about one guy. Like we have over 7 billion humans and thousands of scientists and militaries and stuff who would.
Well, let's tons of bear skeletons.
Let's not bring in the military right now because that could muddy it. But
they're trying to hide it. Yeah, I know. Right?
These things
trying to keep that a secret.
These things could well bury their own, or they could take them far enough away where you're not going to find them. Now there are stories. But you can't. I'm not saying it can't be validated, but the no skeleton thing. That's not a good enough argument when you've got physical evidence. You do have physical evidence. You've got vocals are. Everything is physical. Vocals are physical. Okay? It's waves. Okay.
Okay.
Hairs are physical, and we have those.
Who was it that found the hair?
Yeah, we need to look that up.
Who was it? There have been tons of hairs found and studied. See,
where has it been?
If you studied the subject, you would know. That's what I'm saying.
I'm genuinely curious. I'm not making fun. I'm not putting down.
That's what I'm saying. If you really research it, you will find everything. You will find all the hoaxes. You will find all the misidentifications. You will find situations where hairs have been found, vocalizations recorded. It used to be said that the Patterson footage couldn't be shown to actually be anything more than a man in a suit, but we now know.
Hold on, Phil. Just in case anybody's not familiar with that terminology, the Patterson footage is the same footage we've all seen. It's Bigfoot walking through the creek. He's kind of sluggish, and you see him kind of from like the right side rear.
Yes.
Okay. He, like turns his head. Yeah.
Well, we're used to looking at that thinking, well, that's a big man in a suit. Back in that, I think people over 7 feet tall are about 1 in every 100 million. So back in 1967, they would have had to find somebody that was roughly 7.5 feet tall. You can see the musculature. If it was 67, did they have muscle suits back then to go under a floppy gorilla suit?
Well,
but the main thing is,
they had football pads.
Yes.
If we're sending people into space, I think we can build a gorilla suit.
Yeah.
Dude, the best and brightest did it, called Planet of the Apes, the same year. Do you know how cheesy those things look? That was Hollywood's best.
Well, the Patterson footage looks just as cheesy, dude.
No, it's exactly like that.
You have not.
It's blurry.
Like I love the idea of Thomas saying we're sending people into space. Of course, we can make a gorilla suit, and the whole time Shawn's just over there like twitching, like
we never went twitching for an hour and a half.
Shawn,
if you put human clothing on Patty, just like if you overlaid pants and a shirt, you would realize the proportions of that person. It's a very deformed person. So not only are they, you don't think about it because it's covered with hair, but if you put pants that go down to the ankles and a shirt on it, you're looking at a very deformed 7.5 to 8 foot tall person. In Planet of the Apes, you didn't see bulging thighs where you could see the muscles flexing.
But hold on. Is there a measurement that we can go by? I thought he was in front of fucking trees. How the hell can we tell how tall
It's not in front of trees. You get a clear view. Yes.
So we can determine there was like a measurement.
National Geographic did a very thorough documentary of it, and they did a lot of testing and analyzed what kind of camera was used, how far the subject was. And there wasn't a precise measurement, but they got to where they could get it within a half a foot.
Sure. The only thing I would say with cryptic zoology, I do actually enjoy the subject. I actually research it quite a bit, and I have a lot of fun. It's something that I, just as something on the side that I enjoy. I don't believe any of it, but it's something that I enjoy researching. Again, like I will reserve my belief until there is evidence that concludes that these things are actually true, and when it's this big mystery, I'm going to say, hey, the evidence that's out there, okay, yeah, I see that there's some evidence for it. We got video evidence is better than the evidence for God, but at the same time, I'm still just like, I don't know. I don't know. It's a possibility, but I don't know, and it could be true. It could not be true, but it's not guilty of existing.
Shawn, you got anything before we roll out, brother?
I don't know. I don't know what I would add. I've been so triggered through this entire conversation. I feel like I need therapy at this point because I'm trying to be polite, and I'm like in a movie where you want to scream at the screen, and you're just so mad and you're just yelling at the theater screen, and I can't even talk right now, stuttering and stammering.
This is the man.
I feel like Philip needs a trophy for patience, and he is amazing. And I just felt like letting him go because he was doing so much better than I would have done.
I think you both did great, honestly, as far as I'm concerned.
I've thoroughly enjoyed this, and I'm not supposed to speak anymore, but I do just want to add, I need you guys. I don't like talking with people I only agree with, just so you know that. That's where nothing gets accomplished.
Right.
Well, Shawn says Philip has a lot of patience, but we all know who has all the patience. It's Dr. Hyman. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with us today. It's been a lot of fun. The Happy Debating Atheist and Unapologetics is where you can find Brent Lee. The Happy Debating Atheist is his YouTube channel where you get to actually watch him on video having conversations with people just like Shawn Yankey, which was pretty
and Shawn is actually one of the videos that is on the YouTube channel right now. So go check that out. We had a great time.
It's got a real active comment thread. It's going real good. It does.
But he also does a podcast on apologetics. Shawn Yankey does Me on Things and Stuff. You might recognize him from Conspiracy Theories on Chill. If you go Conspiracy Theories and Chill,
love that show.
If you go to his YouTube page, Me on Things and Stuff, you'll find that. You'll find all his stuff about his Bernie bro bullshit. And no, I'm just kidding. I love Bernie, but you'll find all that there. You'll find Philip Palmer's music if you just reach out to him on Facebook. And Thomas Westbrook, so happy to have you on today, brother.
Hey, thanks for having me. I really enjoyed it.
Absolutely. Check out
it was a pleasure to be on a show with you, man. Seriously.
For sure. Awesome. he's kind of the celebrity
I'm
here.
a big fan.
But check out Holy Kool-Aid. If you don't already know about it, you probably should. If you're somebody that listens to this show and you haven't heard of Holy Kool-Aid yet, or you don't remember last time Thomas was on, go check that out on YouTube. It's a very well done production. Gentlemen, thank you so much.
Real quick, I just want to add one more thing. On the Holy Kool-Aid, the one that you did on the the question of like, oh, you can just go to hell. Is it better to just go to hell, or I mean, if I'm right, then you're gonna go to then you're gonna go to hell. But if you're right, you know what I mean?
Say that again. What do you mean?
He did a Pascal's Wager video, and it was when I was first deconverting, and it was just that was one of the things that really got to me. And that question of if I'm wrong, and if they're wrong, and weighing the two, and his video is just so he just explains it all, and he puts it in such a format that's so easy to understand, and it's so deep that it really got to me, and it really helped me get past that fear of hell and things like that. So I really appreciate Thomas Westbrook a lot for that.
Thanks, man.
Thank you guys all very much.
Absolutely. Thank all of you.
Cut out that whole part where I was wrong about Forrest Gump.
Come on.
That whole damn part. Just get rid of that.
I'll tell you what. I'll tell you this much. It was audio gold, but I will take it out if you want me to. But it's really funny.
I'm just teasing. You can leave it. I would leave it. Go ahead and leave it.
All right.
I kind of liked it. I was wrong anyway because it's a Mandela in itself.
Yeah, and who gives a fuck? It's fucking Forrest Gump.
Hey, we all get shit wrong.
Yeah, it happens.
And this time you were the one that was retarded.
That's right.
I'm always the one.
You can't say that. You can't say that.
It was my turn.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you so much for taking the time and hanging out with me. And I get sometimes these conversations can be heated and stuff, but I appreciate having them with both of you and also with Brent, but especially to the two that I disagreed the most with, I think.
No, I feel exactly the same way. No offense is ever taken. That's the nature of the.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys, and thanks, Robert.
All right, you guys have a good evening.
All right, bye, guys.
Take it easy, y'all.
But life still goes on.
Thank you to Brent, Thomas, Philip, and Shawn. Thank you to Dave at DaveBlairMusic.com. Thank you to our patrons. You can also support this broadcast at patreon.com/right and learn more at therighttoreason.com. Next week, I'll be talking about war theory with Dr. Hector Garcia. We'll discuss his recently released TED Talk. Between now and then, remember that you have the right to reason.
Yeah, Robert Stanley voted for Ralph Nader, but he is a damn good kisser.
Don't believe him when Robert... scratch this one.
The right to reason puts pineapples on pizza.
The right to reason supports Al-Qaeda.
Don't believe Robert when he tells you he's clean. The right to reason is sure to give you herpes.